So welcome to the Leaders in Real Estate podcast. I'm your host, Nick Carman, and I hope this proves to be a mentor in your pocket for all the future leaders of real estate, investment and development professionals who are tuning in right now. Now, we're going to talk about challenges, obstacles, benefits of leadership with the aid of our mentors and sharing their own experience. So today I'm joined by Lee Bradford. Now, Lee is the president of DR Horton Property Management, and Lee's responsible for $3.2 billion portfolio, launching the property management as an in-house division for the country's #1 house builder for 23 consecutive years. Now, who better to mentor us on leadership than someone who leads a team of more than 275 professionals built from scratch in the last 4 years? Lee, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, it is genuinely my pleasure. Let's get started. Just tell us a little bit about what you're involved in today, please, Lee.
Well, today I am leading a diverse portfolio of multifamily and build to rent assets throughout 35 markets in the US. So we cover all product type, and part of the challenge that really appealed to me was thinking about what does the next chapter in property management look like? And I think as portfolios and product styles are adapting, business has to adapt to change with those needs.
Well, I look forward to diving into that as we get in then, Lee. But let's sort of wind the clock back a little bit now. We will talk about this throughout this episode, and it's drive. And I'm curious, whenever I get to meet leaders like you, Lee, who've scaled so high on the corporate ladder, what do you think drives you?
Oh, that's a difficult but great question. Obviously, the
Lee, all my questions, they're easy to ask, tough to answer, right?
fair. That's why I'm in the hot seat, right? Obviously, there's a desire to achieve and compete, but I think at heart, I'm a builder. I love building processes, building people, and building environments. And being able to look and see tangible results of what we've built together is really, at the end of the day, what keeps me coming back time and time again.
Okay, interesting. Now, if we get into leadership, right? Let's get into why we are here. When was your first opportunity to lead?
Probably when I joined Summit Properties, which no longer exists. They were acquired by Camden many, many years ago. But that was probably my first true opportunity to lead on a large scale and have a team reporting up to me. But, probably sounds cliche to say there are opportunities to lead even when you're not in a leadership position. And
Mhm.
I think I took those opportunities speaking up when I felt things needed to be said or acknowledged or identifying problems that needed to be resolved.
Did you feel ready for that first leadership role?
No, I've, does anybody ever? I think if you
Well, I
do,
mean
then
that's why I ask, isn't it? I mean, because I think there's this perception, isn't it, to say, oh, I mean, obviously I'm a recruiter. I hear this a lot. I'm not ready for that. That feels too big a leap for me right now. And I think it's important just to acknowledge that the people who take these positions also don't feel ready, but that's why they take that leap.
and I think there's someone told me once that if something scares you or intimidates you, it simply means that you have to do it because those are the opportunities and the risks that you take that help you build something and achieve something. But no, I was not ready, and I learned a lot of lessons and trial by fire along the way, and still learn lessons every day.
Well, let's talk about that. What have been some of your greatest challenges then, during this experience you've had?
I think the greatest challenges are around how to bring people to find common ground. It's very easy to identify areas of disagreement and focus on those. But when you're on a team, and I've been lucky to drive my own team, but all the teams I've driven have been responsible for working and supporting the success of other teams as well. It's easy to forget we're all playing towards the same goal. And so trying to find ways to build alignment and agreement with disparate teams has been the greatest challenge because it's one that requires, I think, the most finesse and the most thoughtful approaches.
Next question. The leaders you've worked for, the people you've experienced leadership from, what are some of the qualities that you've admired from those leaders?
Compassion, intelligence, the ability to support you when you make a mistake and help you learn from it versus tearing you down for making a mistake. And I think really integrity.
Has that shaped you as a leader?
Absolutely. I think I've been shaped by being lucky to work with great leaders. I've also been shaped by working for some not so great leaders because not so great leaders teach you what not to do. And I'm sure there have been times in my career where I could have been a better leader. And I took those as opportunities to say, what do I learn from this experience to make me better in the future?
Well, are you ready to get your report card out, Lee? Because I've done a bit of digging, and I've spoke to a few people who have been fortunate to be in your teams over the years. So
Hit me with
I
what you
asked
got.
one of those. I hit you with it, right? So I spoke to someone who's been in your teams several times over the years. Now, I asked her what type of leader is Lee. This is what she gave me. Lee never gives you the answer. She leads you to it. So Lee's team will walk through fire because of this. That's nice to hear, isn't it?
That's a lovely thing to hear. Yes.
How do you do that? How do you not jump in? How do you I equate sort of leadership and parenting. There's some similarities here as well, isn't it? How do you jump in and stop that employee from falling? Yeah.
I think that's a skill that I've learned from many of the leaders I've worked with, that often while you're on your way up, it's about making sure your presence is known. However, when you are a leader, it's often about sitting back and listening to the thoughts of others. Your team is going to bring you the best insights and the best ideas, and it's figuring out how to take those insights and ideas and building them into something that is actionable. And again, where people can find areas to agree on and move forward. It's also your question on how not to let people fall. It's about being honest and direct when having those conversations and sharing your concerns and thoughts. But what I've found most is listening to their concerns and thoughts versus walking up to somebody and saying, you're making a mistake. This is a bad decision. And I'm going to tell you what's wrong with your decision. I will often approach it from, I have some concerns, but I'd like to understand if you have any concerns and can you share your perspective with me? Because they often know where the pitfalls are in the actions that they're taking. And then together we can build an action plan to help them move forward in the right direction.
That's a nice segue to something else I collected from your report card now, Lee. And you mentioned about the traits that you admire in leaders is about calm and empathy and working through problems together. And I asked someone else who spent some time in your teams, and I asked her about some experience about when things have gone wrong. And she gave me this brilliant anecdote about when she was responsible for a special project regarding some technology, and it went very badly wrong. And she came into your office and confessed what was happening. And she said she fell to the floor about this. And you came and lay down with her and said, let's work the problem together. And I thought that was a brilliant story. And that one anecdote tells me so much about you, Lee, and about how you lead. I thought that was brilliant.
Well, that was
But
one of
how
my
do you
favorite
stay so
moments.
calm?
I never had anybody lay on the floor before, but I thought, okay, if this is where we are, let's get down there together. Calm is definitely a learned skill. In my earlier career, I was much more action oriented and much more focused on charging ahead. And what I learned through my background in technology and learning and development, as well as leadership, is you get more answers by listening and remaining calm. I think one bad management thing that always stuck with me is I had a key team member, and one day I got frustrated and I took my frustration out and snapped at them, which is not something I would often or ever do. And 5 years later, they'd still be like, "You remember that time you snapped at me?" And I was like, wow, the one time where I lost my calm, I lost my cool, had such an impact on you that 5 years later, all the great things we've done together, all the things we've built, is that still having an impact on you? So I learned to think before I speak and think about the impact of how I'm saying what I'm saying is going to have.
I think that's really powerful. And again, that says a lot about you, Lee. That message has stuck with you. That you haven't let that get you frustrated by saying that's not the important. Yeah, that one slip, that one fall. What about everything else we've done brilliantly? That I think you can also take that in your stride. Now, let's get into the crux of this conversation. Our audience now is admiring sort of the prospect of their first leadership role, or they are right in the eye of the storm of their first leadership role. So they're looking for a bit of help. What do you think some of the biggest challenges face those guys in that stage of their career? What do you see now from these 300 people in your teams today, the people who are in those stages of their career? What are some of the biggest challenges you've sort of seen that they are struggling with?
Often when you're in your first leadership role or building your first leadership role, you have now been put in a place where you are leading your peers and your friends and finding the right balance of how to interact with a leader and how to understand that you now have responsibilities that are greater. And you are now tasked with making the difficult decision. That difficult decision isn't on anyone else. And I think part of the hardest part about leadership is being able to make a decision, even when you know it's not going to be popular or embraced by everyone. But as a leader, you have to learn that not taking action, not making a decision, and not moving forward is actually the worst thing that you can do for your team.
I think it's a hard lesson, isn't it? Because we all want to be liked, don't we? I mean, it's the human condition. We want to be popular, and yes, and I've certainly felt this in my own experience. There are leaders who I've loved, and I want to feel that from my team. So trying to making a decision that goes against the grain that is unpopular is really, really hard.
It is really hard, but also the impact of leaving your team in the balance of waiting for a decision is equally hard. So by making that decision, you're actually taking action that helps provide what I would call the respect and the love of your team. They may not always agree with your decisions. And I believe a great leader shares the reason for their decisions and the impact that they believe that decision will have, but they will be so relieved to have a path forward. And a great leader will also leave an open door to say, I'm not sure if this is going to have the impact we want, and I'm trusting you to come to me and tell me what's working, what's not working, so we can make this better together. But too often I've seen leaders, and I've struggled with it myself, not want to take action. And I've seen the impact of that. If you have a difficult decision about whether to keep a team member or let a team member go, no one likes those decisions. But when your team comes to you and says, thank you for finally doing that, then to me, that's an indicator of, wow, this is an action I should have taken long ago. And it may not be a hard decision about whether to keep someone or let them go. It could be a decision of, I have two teams who fundamentally disagree on how to get to the same outcome. And I have to be the person who chooses which direction that we're taking. But we have to take action and define a direction.
Lee, tell me about that poster behind you. Just read it off for me.
Uh, I believe it says, be brave enough to suck at something new. When I started DR Horton, one of my team members and great friends sent me a post on social media that said, be brave enough to suck at something new. And, it was a big step for me in my career. It's one thing being vice president, it's another thing moving to the top of the food chain. And it really resonated with me. So I put it on my whiteboard so that every day when I sat at my desk and I thought, I don't know 100% what I'm doing, I looked at that. And one of the people that didn't even work in my division within DR Horton saw it every day when they walked by my desk. And it resonated with them so much that they had it made into a formal plaque with me, formal plaque for me. And I told them I would keep it with me always, and I have, and I will, because it is a reminder of being brave and being bold. And when you start something, you're never going to be the expert at it. You're going to learn as you go along.
I like that. I like that a lot. But so much of this is about being brave, isn't it? It is. It is. There are, and that I think that's the reality of being a leader is that you're at the front of this. Things will change. Real estate is often compared to being a slow market. Things move slowly, but with people, that can change during the day, and I think that is really really important about that being brave. But how do you be brave? I mean, the stakes now for Lee, are ginormous, aren't they? We talked about some of the numbers before. This is billions of dollars. These are, even personally, this is a ginormous responsibility. How do you not cave, to that responsibility and play it safe?
At the end of the day, I'm responsible not just for $3.2 billion of property. I'm responsible for teams. I'm responsible for people who've entrusted their career with me, with my group. And I'm responsible for ensuring they have an environment where they feel that they can succeed and that collectively we can work together to ensure our team is delivering the results that they need. And so that means even on the tough days, I have to show up,
Do you
and
have an
I'll
e- I
tell
mean,
you,
do you have a Lee? Do you have an easy day? You just made this even more scary, right? Just listing all those responsibilities.
I do have easy days because I'm lucky that, not lucky, I have chosen skilled and smart people who I trust to help do this together. And I'm smart enough to listen to them. So that means that there are easy days because I'm a collaborative leader and I will go to anyone on my team and ask what's working, what's not working, and how do we make it right? And then work with the people who are on my team to implement those solutions. So those are the good days.
You've given me method there, Lee, but I don't think you've answered my question about how does this not scare you? How does this not scare you back into your comfort zone?
Probably because I go back to my goal every day of why did I take this opportunity? Why did I choose this role? And that was to help push property management forward to our next phase of evolution. And that means you have to make bold choices and you have to make smart decisions.
So that resonates with me. When I set up Velop, when I left the comfort and safety of a big organization, and then started something new up. A close friend and customer gave me a book, Simon Sinek's Why, and I've read that a couple of times over the last sort of 12 months as well, and I think that also is really powerful stuff. So sticking on that, talk to our audience. What book, what resource, what would you recommend these guys go and pick up today that's going to help them during these dark days, right?
Well, I also am a big fan of anything Simon Sinek. His why was really revolutionary to me because it changed the way I thought. And it has been the foundation of a lot of initiatives that I've done as a leader. But I would say for me, I believe that most breakdowns in business and in life are really due to communication. Not necessarily what's said, but how it's received. So I'd recommend any resource that helps you better understand how others communicate and how to adapt your style to connect more effectively. And for me, that's the DISC profile. It's a simple assessment that helps you understand how you tend to lead, communicate, make decisions, and collaborate, especially under pressure. The benefit of the DISC profile is not just the insight that it gives you into yourself, but the understanding it gives you and how others approach these same items. It's not about labeling people, it's about awareness. When you understand your style and how to adapt your style to meet others where they are, everything changes. Communication gets better, you build trust faster, you reduce friction, and you strengthen relationships. And to me, that is the foundation of great leadership.
Oh, on that, using those tools, I completely agree with you. I think it can be an absolute game changer. Opening your eyes then to what are our differences and where do we meet, and recognizing those, I think is can be rocket fuel for leadership as well. Okay, so what trait of leadership have you observed, Lee, that during your career you have doubled down on? What has become core to you as a leader?
Asking questions to gain a better sense of understanding. And that's whether understanding the goal, understanding the project, or the concern. But it's also about understanding what drives people and what concerns people about the project so that we can identify the best solutions.
What have you had to quieten? What have you had to try and lose from this toolkit you've been developing over the years? So, what, for example, might what trait did you have or use, or even maybe something you've observed in other leaders that over the years you've tried to reduce?
Probably my way or the highway, right? I read something once that it said there's 6 solutions to every problem. And probably of those 6, there are probably only 3, and there may be one best, but it's identifying what those 6 solutions are. So if I come in and say, this is the only way that we're going to do it, that cuts out other great feedback, other great ideas, which I may not have thought of. So I try never to be, I try rarely, I will say, because sometimes as a leader, you have to be dictatorial, but I try rarely to be dictatorial, to say, nope, this is the only way that it can happen, and this is how we're doing it.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because if you ask less experienced leaders, chances are, that sort of that military general style leadership is what they associate with leadership, don't they? I think that's the portrayal. That's what a leader should be. Yet I ask this question a lot in these series and to your peers, Lee, and very rarely is that's their go-to style. So I think we've got a lot to learn. Okay, right. We've talked a lot about leadership. We've talked a lot about the scale of the leadership that you have today. Is it worth it?
I probably hesitated longer than I should have to answer that question. For me, 100% it is worth it. But you have to be aware in your desire to be a leader, there are compromises that you will make. And by that, I mean, you will decide where am I investing my time? And there's only so much time. So you have to make choices of, am I taking the business trip? Am I spending the extra hours at work versus going out and doing something that I want? So yes, leadership is worth it. It is an honor. It is a privilege, but it is hard work and nothing worth having comes easily. So you have to be convinced that it's a role you truly want.
You must have interviewed countless numbers of prospective leaders. What are you looking for in your teams?
I am looking for people who are open to new ideas, who flexibility, and who genuinely care, not just about the success of the platform, but building great people.
Just expand on that a little bit. I mean, that's because how could someone who has got less experience how could they demonstrate that to you in a relatively sort of short term of their career? What could I'm thinking now of giving the advice to our audience, the guys who aren't in that spot at the moment. Let's say they're next week they're going to be in front of Lee for an interview for their first interview for their first leadership role. What can they have done? What can they have done in preparation for this? What foundation should they be laying now in their role today to impress you?
Let's see. I think it's about being able to effectively share what you've brought to the table today, but also share what your vision is for what you believe you can bring to the table in this new expanded role for you. And being able to provide text on how you would achieve what you want to do as you move forward in your leadership journey. While I talked about an assessment, the DISC assessment, there are a lot of assessments out there, and assessments often say, this is how you operate where you are today, but it's not necessarily an indicator of where you can grow and how you can operate in the future. So I would want to understand for my next leadership group, that next generation of leader, what their vision is and how they will work to create that vision.
Okay, Lee, we've got to start wrapping this up, but I wanted to make sure I asked you at least one last question. And we said it at the start. Your career has started off like a rocket and continued in that same trajectory. But just share some of that experience with us. What have been some of the most pivotal moments of that career so far?
When I think about the pivotal moments in my career, what really stands out isn't a single event. It's realizing that leadership is how you show up every day. The two biggest opportunities I've had actually came from people that I didn't work with directly. They've just seen how I approached my work, how I collaborate, and how I treated others. And that's stuck with me. It reminds me that people are always watching how we lead, not just when you're in a leadership role or not just when you're in the spotlight, but in those everyday moments. Consistency, professionalism, and how you treat people can open doors you don't even know are there.
Well, what a positive message for us to wrap this up on. Thank you so much for giving up your time. And if you guys listening in the audience, make sure you click like, click subscribe, and I want to hear from you in the comment section. I want to hear what questions have I not asked Lee. I want to hear who you want to be on this series next. Thank you very much for giving up this time, Lee, so graciously.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been a pleasure.